join us here.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Ted, for joining us. Just a reminder to our audience on live stream, we hope to have some time for a couple questions at the end, so if you are watching, use the hashtag #SocialGood. And if you're in the audience here at the 92nd Street Y, there should be people in the aisles with note cards. So Ted, starting out, why don't you tell me what the goals are for UN Week? What do you hope everyone walks away with at the end of the week?
That's not my job. Hopefully, an improved knowledge of what the UN does and what it's all about.
And what are the key issues that you're focused on?
Well, the issue that I'm most concerned about is nuclear weapons. I think we should get rid of them as quickly as we can before something really goes wrong, because the world's too beautiful and nice a place to blow up.
Mm-hmm. What is your solution?
Well, the leaders of the world at the Security Council last year voted unanimously to get rid of nuclear weapons. They really don't serve any worthwhile purpose. We've already seen what they do in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and those were bombs that were 1,000th as powerful as the ones we have today. We just get rid of them. And it's easy to do. We have the IAEA to supervise it, and we just all agree to do it because it's the right and the smart thing to do. And then just get rid of them and then don't build them again. And even though somebody could build them, and if some nut decided to do it, there's a way of handling that peacefully.
Mm-hmm. Has there been any progress in the past year towards it, do you think?
Yes, I think there has. I think the Security Council making that vote last year was, I think it was last year, was very critical.
Mm-hmm. And, I mean, what role do you think our leaders have to play in that? I mean, why is it taking so long?
What, to get rid of nuclear weapons?
Yeah.
Well, it took us a long time to get them. You know, we worked on them for millions of years, and then, you know, we got the stone tools, and from there we thought we needed something more powerful.
Mm-hmm. Now, in lunch we were talking about another issue you're very passionate about, which is climate change. You think that we can have, well, how far away do you think we are from a sustainable energy environment?
Further away than I'd like to see us, because we're not taking the actions that we should be taking. It's the same sort of thing as the nuclear situation. But that doesn't mean that it couldn't change overnight, because we have instantaneous global communications today that we didn't have 100 years ago. And we can do things today that we couldn't do 100 or 1,000 years ago. More should be expected of us, and is.
Mm-hmm. And you're an investor in some alternative energy projects, right?
Yes.
What are they?
Well, the largest one by far is a 250-acre solar array in Cimarron, New Mexico, that's powering 9,000 homes. We're junior partners with the Southern Company, which is the largest electric utility in the South and the biggest coal customer. But that's okay. I'm trying to bring them around, and to think more about alternate clean energy, and they are.
Mm-hmm. And what type of results are you seeing from that project so far? Do you have any kind of?
Well, we transferred 9,000 homes over to clean renewable energy from using fossil fuel.
Mm-hmm. Now, we talked a little bit, we were just having lunch back there, about nuclear power. And you're not a fan of it. Tell us why.
Well, I'm not real. I'd rather have a nuclear power plant than a coal burning plant, because one will kill you for sure, and the other one might. I'll take might over for sure. But the reasons that I don't think that nuclear is the solution. But first of all, it's not economically competitive. Secondly, it's dangerous. Thirdly, you've got the problem of what to do with the spent fuel, and nobody wants it. So it's being stored all over the world on the same facilities where it was used, which is not the appropriate place much of the time, because most of the nuclear power plants were built fairly close to the population centers because it was easier to get the power, but we didn't have digital transmission like we do today. Digital transmission, unfortunately, is mostly just on the drawing board, but it's been worked out so where it works. Our technology has been improving in so many different areas at such an incredible pace that it's been very hard for us to keep up with it. Mm-hmm. But we need a whole new digital transmission system across the country like we did when we built the interstate system, mm-hmm. to move the power from wind and solar. But in the wind's case, the best place to obtain it is on the Great Plains, and solar the southwest, where we built the array in Cimarron, New Mexico. New Mexico, Arizona, Southern California, and Southern Nevada, where the sun shines almost every day.
Mm-hmm. Do you think more needs to be done from a public policy perspective?
But that's what needs to be done. The public policy perspective. I mean, we would have had the Waxman-Markey bill passed. The House passed it, and it would have passed the Senate if President Obama had brought it up before health care. Health care was so divisive and so controversial and so complicated that it completely polarized the government, and we've had basically a locked up situation since then where very little has occurred.
Mm-hmm. Now, globally, an issue you've been focused on has been women and children's health. I know recently you went to Ghana, actually, on a mission very much about that, and at lunch you were talking about kind of some of the atrocities you've seen worldwide. I'd love to hear about kind of some of your work there and what folks in our audience can do to get involved.
Well, healthcare is not controversial. For instance, family planning, though, was controversial. It's coming back into vogue, but everybody's for better health for children and for everybody. So that's an easy thing for a foundation to do is to work in healthcare, and everybody will love you. But it's not. It's important, and it is important. But I don't think that it's any more important than family planning, because when I was born, there were 2 billion people on the planet in 1938. Now there's 7 billion. That's 3.5 times as many people in the lifetime of one person. And 1 billion people went to bed hungry last night. And if we keep going the way we are, we're going to add another 1 billion people in the next 15 years. And then the next 15 years after that, another 1 billion. I don't think the planet can support 9 billion people. I don't think it can support 7 billion people. I think on a sustainable basis, at a decent standard of living, Paul Ehrlich, years ago when he wrote The Population Bomb, recommended between 2 and 2.5 billion people that the Earth could support, with everybody living at the standard of living of the average American at the time, which was very, very good, which was 5 times what the actual standard of living was on a worldwide basis. So, and we can do it without abortion. We can do it just with family planning. And one of the big disgraces in the world today is that there's 230 million people estimated by the UN, 230 million women, who would use birth control devices if they could afford them. And it would cost $4 billion a year to do that. The United States share would be about $1 billion. But that would cut the population growth in half just by doing that. I mean, it's crazy that we haven't done that. And we could do it. And right now, you say we don't have the money to pay our dues to the United Nations. Some congressmen are saying that. They want to cut back, unilaterally have us cut back on the little bit that we do go into the UN with. And that would be very foolish. I mean, to put an American soldier in Afghanistan costs $1 million a year, and we can get the UN troops to do it. The Nigerian gets about $20,000 a year. So we should be outsourcing the military. In fact, we are outsourcing it because a large proportion of our servicemen now are from overseas. We have an immigrant problem, but not if they're willing to serve in the armed services.
Right. So you also have this very long worldview where you're kind of thinking a million years into the future.
Well,
You
how
were
about
saying
1,000?
1,000. But you think we're in serious problems within the next 50 years if some of the issues that you're talking about don't get addressed?
We're in serious problems right now. Talk to the children who have asthma, and the asthma incidence is up like 100% in the last 20 years in this country, and it's caused by coal and oil being burned. But we're breathing poison, and there's no reason why we have to. And it's poisonous from an economic standpoint because we're importing so much of it in the case of oil and transferring our wealth to the Middle East.
Mm-hmm. Now, with all these projects you're involved in, how do you define success?
Success? How do you define it? When you do the right things and don't do the wrong things.
Does that hold true in the media business as well?
It holds true pretty much across the board. If you want to get rich, be smart, not dumb. Make smart investments, like I did. And don't make dumb ones, like I did too with AOL.
Now, speaking of the media business, I mean, what do you see as the role of a media company, of a CNN, of a Mashable in doing good in the world?
Well, if you give good information to people, you're doing good, in my opinion. If you're giving bad information, you're doing harm. Remember, somebody said years ago, the truth will set you free. And when you tell the truth the best you can, you're, I think, making a positive contribution.
Mm-hmm.
When you're telling lies, I think you're doing wrong.
Does the current cable...
When you're wiretapping illegally, you're doing wrong.
Mm-hmm. What does the current cable news environment bother you, concern you in any way?
I don't have much to do about it. I try and concentrate my time and energy into areas where I can make a difference. Where I can't make a difference, I try, because everything's so complicated now. If you just want to study wind power, that's a full-time job, just trying to keep up with wind power. Forget solar for a minute, but if you want to keep up with solar, it's hard, and you want to keep with solar, wind, and geothermal, and the other more exotic opportunities. You won't have anything else to think about. It's hard to remember when your kids' birthdays are. and those are really important things. The family should come first. So I don't, I'm not running a news, I read The Economist every week, pretty much from cover to cover. It concentrates a lot on international news, but with my involvement with the UN, I need to know what's going on in the whole world. The U.S. media, I think, concentrates, for my personal needs, concentrates too much on the United States and not what's going on in the world. We're in an interconnected world. That's why I think the United Nations is so important, that we have a place where we can get organized and work on an organized basis to deal with the problems that are bigger than any one nation can handle, like the overfishing of the oceans, like the pollution of the atmosphere, like deforestation, like global climate change. Those are things, refugees, world hunger, those are things that one country can't solve by itself, not even the United States.
Mm-hmm. Now, I do want to stay on the media theme for a little bit. You said you read The Economist on your iPad at lunch.
That's right.
What do you see as the future of media, print media especially? You've been a long time pessimist on it.
Gone.
Gone?
Well, listen, it was great. It's like coal and oil. They served us well. The Industrial Revolution started about 200 years ago, and we've done really, really well with it. We've had electricity, and we wouldn't have had that without it, not at this point, or not as much as we have. But the technology has improved so much that it's time to. Obviously, I can download The Economist on Thursday evening when it's ready to go. I don't get my printed copies until Monday afternoon, and when I get them, I'm usually on the road, so they have to be mailed to me. So I usually don't get it till Tuesday or or Wednesday, and if I do it electronically, I've got it almost a week earlier. And if you're in markets and making investments and playing the market, one day is a long time.
And what role do you see?
And then it's also less expensive.
Yeah.
It costs a lot to cut down trees and make pipe paper and print it out. It was wonderful. I mean, otherwise, if it wouldn't have been for paper, we wouldn't have newspapers. And what would we do without toilet paper? We'll still need that. We haven't come up with a solution for that, I don't think.
What role do you see technology playing in some of the issues that you're focused on with the UN Foundation?
I'm sorry, would you repeat the question? Too many people were laughing and it distracted.
Sure.
But also, no matter how complicated, dealing with nuclear weapons, the only way I can make it through is to keep my sense of humor. I don't know how many of you read my ex-wife's book, my ex-wife's new book, but she gave me credit for giving her sense of humor back. And I said, well, what the heck? Why are we divorced, for God's sakes? I mean, would you leave somebody that brought you your sense of humor? I mean, I can't think of anything more important. And I try my best to keep my sense of humor and not let myself get too depressed about the situation.
Well, you mentioned that actually at lunch, how kind of your ability to make friends was so key to CNN's international expansion and your ability to do business around the world.
Yeah, I studied history, and it looked to me like the people that did the best in life were the ones that made the most friends. The ones that made the most enemies did not do well. And that's what happens when you bomb people. You don't make people like you when you bomb them. In fact, with business as interconnected as it is today, and particularly with CNN, which was all over the world, everybody was a potential customer of mine. I hated to see my country bombing my customers. It's customers are important, and you should treat them with dignity and respect and friendliness. And I went out and I made friends with Castro and the godless communists in Russia and China, and we did the Goodwill Games. And the next thing you know, they weren't enemies anymore. They were friends and customers. And I made a lot of money, too, and had a lot of fun. I think we should try that for a while. Next time, instead of sending in the troops, why don't we send some doctors and engineers and scientists over to help these developing countries. And then they won't terrorize us anymore. People don't terrorize people that are their sponsors.
Right. Well, this theme of cutting back on...
See, that's the simple, smart things as opposed to a big, dumb thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, this theme of cutting back on military significantly...
Well, Costa Rica hasn't had a military for 70 years, and they're doing better than any other country in Central America. They're stuck with the military. They put all their money into health care and education, and it's paid off big. And there was all those wars in Central America with Guatemala and Honduras and El Salvador, and they stayed out of it. Nobody attacked them, They didn't attack anybody. They don't have anybody to attack with. They've got a police force, and that's it.
Well, where would you like to see the U.S. take its military spending levels down to?
Where I'd like to see them, or what I'd like to see?
Well, realistically.
I'd like to see the whole world cut military expenditures back over 10 years, 10% a year. That would give some time to find other things for the soldiers to do. They could build a new transmission system that we need from coast to coast and do that all over the world, and then the military budget would be zero in 10 years. Anywhere, and all that money would go into fighting poverty, but it would eliminate poverty and eliminate most disease. It would solve most of human problems. That the money's locked up in the military that we need to solve our problems, because we're broke. Fighting these wars has bankrupted us. $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there. $1 million for one soldier for 1 year in Afghanistan. $1 million. I mean, how many people in here make $1 million a year? Hardly anybody. It's crazy. It is, in my opinion, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Do you think...
it made good sense back in the Middle Ages, when there was nothing else to do. I mean, we didn't have TV, and there was no NFL. no Olympics, and the only thing to do to keep them getting bored to tears is to go out and fight. But then we got lots of other things to do now.
Right.
We even got Viagra for the older men, you know. You can maintain having fun later on. You don't have to start a war to have a good time or to have some excitement. You can have excitement with your wife. That's what I mean about a sense of humor.
So one thing I want to talk about, I mean, you're someone that obviously was enormously successful. Recently, the Giving Pledge, the Bill Gates, Warren Buffett-led effort for America's wealthiest individuals to give their money away to not.
I already qualified for it.
I know.
No, I think I was the only one that did. But
what do you think the progress is?
I'm a supporter of it, and I went to the meetings, and I write letters to people.
Do you think wealthy Americans are doing enough, though? Are they giving enough back?
I don't know. It depends on the person.
Yeah.
You know, some people are doing more than they should, but not many.
So
I want to be damn sure. I've seen those commercials on TV, you know, for burial insurance, and I don't want to leave my children with my funeral bills and they can't pay them, you know. That worries me. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to hang on to enough money to cover my funeral expenses.
I think you'll be okay.
I hope so, but the way the economy's going now, you know, boy, you talk about that market, it's up and down. You could lose your buns quickly.
Well, are you optimistic or pessimistic on the U.S. economy right now?
I don't know. I'm thinking about nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know about, I never was big on stocks. I always had my own company. Mm-hmm. But I do have some investments, but mostly I'm in bonds. I lost so much in the stock market, you know, when the AOL merger. I lost at one point like 90%, and I was really scared. Mm-hmm. You know, nobody wants to go broke, particularly if you've been rich. That's, you know, if you've never been rich, it's not so bad to be poor. But being poor and then rich and then facing the prospect of being poor again is not a very pleasant prospect.
Staying on the business side.
Because rich is better. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Well, so what
It's
advice?
nice to be able to afford dessert.
So what advice do you have for those in the audience that aspire to be rich, that want to start a business?
Well, what my advice is?
Yeah, or what areas?
Well, first of all, I'd suggest that they read my book because the formula's in there. I can't answer it in just one. But if I had one sentence, early to bed, early to rise, work like hell, and advertise. That's what I tell college students.
You might need to repeat that one slowly
question.
so people can tweet it out.
That same dumb question. You know how many times I've been asked that question?
I'm sure it's probably the most frequently asked.
Well, that's why I keep answering it that way.
One question that I think ties into the themes of this event is what role that social responsibility can play in people that are thinking of starting a company. How do you think, you know, what role does it play? I mean, do you think businesses that are starting
first
today
of all,
have an
if you
obligation?
start a company that has a good product or a good service, and you're already making a social contribution by hiring people and helping to cut down on the unemployment. So that's the start. And I always had social motivation. I wanted to do something worthwhile. That's why I got out of the billboard business, which I was born into, but my father was in the billboard business, because all it did was advertising and money. I wanted to be in something like programming and make programs like Captain Planet and Gettysburg. And that's why I got into television, because that way I could make programs as well as make money.
Well, Captain Planet is an interesting example. I mean, do you think there's anything on TV today that resembles that, or that media is trying?
Not that I know of. Yeah. Not that strong. And they're going to, Warner Brothers is going to try and revive Captain Planet. I think they realize that they've got an asset, and they're right now developing a Captain Planet movie, theatrical movie, to kind of kick it off.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the other opportunities out there for entrepreneurs that you think are most exciting? If you were to start a business today, what area would you focus on?
Even though there are problems right now, and there always will be, and you got to be very careful, I think that alternate clean energy is the biggest single opportunity for the future. because it's so large. We're going to have to redo the entire global energy structure with renewables and switch over to wind and solar and geothermal and maybe some of the other more esoteric products that are in development. That's going to be a huge opportunity because it's got to be done everywhere. And we've still over 1 billion people, I think about 1.5 billion homes, but 25% of the homes in the world still don't have access to electricity. And that's another thing that the UN and the UN Foundation are working on. We're going to have a dinner, I guess it's either tonight or tomorrow night, I can't remember, to try and kick off and get really moving energy for everybody. Everyone should have electricity. It's just like access to birth control, the birth control devices, access to electricity. Just if you have one light bulb in your home so your kids can do their homework at night when it gets dark. I mean, can you imagine how would you like to be a mom and a dad that didn't have electricity and your kids couldn't do their homework at night? I mean, talk about falling behind, because there's no worse poverty than not having access to energy.
What do you think about access to the internet and technology? Is that a fundamental right as well?
You know, cable and satellite TV was where I was working last time I checked. But I think, you know, I think the internet's great. I use it from time to time.
What do you use on the internet? What do you check? What services do you use?
Well, I get The Economist on it.
Okay. Awesome. Question from the audience. What do you tell people who say that the UN has lost its relevance?
Has done what?
Has lost its relevance. Just reading from the card.
Lost its what?
Relevance.
Lost its relevance. Never was more relevant, because there are more things that we have to do together in the world today than ever before. I mean, global climate change, international air travel, refugees, immigration, overfishing of the oceans, global climate change, peace and security issues. We have to work together like never before. It's no longer you or me, it's you and me, because we're going to make it together or we're not going to make it at all.
Gotcha. Another one from the audience. Are you glad you made your $1 billion donation to the UN Foundation?
Absolutely. I wanted to do everything that I possibly could to promote working with the United Nations and to strengthen it.
This is a good one. What is the UN Foundation doing to engage youth in solving global issues? Engage youth in solving global issues.
Engaging youth?
Yeah.
Well, lots of different programs, but that is extremely important. The youth are next generation, and when I speak to a lot of young groups, I say, you know, the kids that are in college today are going to be the ones that turn it around, if it's going to get turned around, because the rest of us probably don't have time.
This is one of my questions. What do you think makes a good leader?
A good leader? I mean, that you can't answer a question like that in one line.
Well, like at lunch, for instance, you were talking about how...
Because it's very complex. It takes a lot of different things to make a good leader. Hey, how about that?
Well, you mentioned in the first year of CNN...
You know...
So, well, how about this
work
example?
like hell and advertise.
In the first year of CNN, you said that you came in at half your revenue expectation and twice the expenses, right?
Four times the losses.
Four times the losses. So what are you telling the troops in that situation? How are you keeping people motivated? How are you keeping the team on track?
One Friday, I had to ask the executives to hold their checks over the weekend because there wasn't enough money in the bank to cash them all. And they did, and that was the low point. But we came close to going broke. I mean, we sweated the payroll every week for 20 years.
Right.
Anybody here know what sweat the payroll means? Right? Yep. And then when you make it through, by God, it's a good feeling. And when you don't make it, it's awful. Bankruptcy.
I think one good question to maybe end it on. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the
Optimistic.
future? What's your reason for all the optimism? You were kind of doom and gloom earlier.
What else can you be? When I told Captain Cousteau, who I had the good fortune to underwrite for 10 years, I was on the Calypso and the Amazon with him. This is about 20 years ago, and I was a little down, and I said, Captain, I don't know. And he said, Ted, even if we knew for sure we weren't going to make it, he said, what else, which we don't. He said, what else could men of good conscience do but keep fighting to the very end? And whenever I get down a little bit, I think of what the captain gave me that advice, and I said, I'm going to keep fighting to the very end. Mm-hmm. Now, I've got a lot of flags in the flag bag on my boat, but there's no white flag in there. Surrender is not an option. We're going to kick their ass. That's right. You know, the Republicans and the Tea Party and, you know, the people that don't believe in global warming and don't believe in this and don't believe in that, you know, we're going to just outwork them and outlast them. That's what I did with the Braves. And finally, you win, you know. Because we're right and they're wrong. And that gives you more motivation because the guys that are wrong will give up before the guys that are right.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a great message to end it on, Ted. Thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
your time.